Right now, somewhere in your house there is a thermostat. You touch it without thinking. The temperature obeys you, but 74,000 years ago, your ancestors had no such thing, and the world was trying to kill every single one of them. You've heard of ice ages. You picture snow, maybe a woolly mammoth. But that's not what almost erased humanity. It was faster than that, stranger than that. And the answer to how we survived it is still written into your body today. Let's go back. Around 74,000 years ago, a volcano named Toba on the island of Sumatra erupted with a force no human has ever witnessed since. It was not a mountain coughing smoke. It was the largest volcanic eruption in the last 2 million years. Ash didn't just fall over Sumatra. It fell over India, over Africa, over Arabia, in layers thick enough that geologists can still find it today, a grey fingerprint buried in the soil of 3 continents. The sky changed first. Sunlight dimmed for years. Some researchers estimate global temperatures dropped by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, and in some regions, far more than that. That might not sound like much, but 3 degrees is the difference between a forest and a desert, between rain and drought, between a herd of animals and no herd at all. This is called a volcanic winter, and for the humans living through it, it didn't look like a headline. It looked like the sky turning the color of ash, day after day, month after month, for years. That must have felt endless. Here's where it gets strange. Geneticist Stanley Ambrose proposed something in 1998 that reshaped how scientists think about human survival. He looked at human DNA and noticed something odd. Compared to other species, humans have shockingly little genetic diversity. Chimpanzees, our closest relatives, have more genetic variation within a single group living in one forest than exists across all 8 billion humans on Earth combined. Why would that be true? Ambrose's theory, known as the Toba catastrophe theory, suggests that the eruption and the volcanic winter that followed nearly wiped humanity out. Not close to extinct in a poetic sense. Actually, biologically, dangerously close. Some estimates suggest the global human population may have dropped to as few as 3,000 to 10,000 breeding individuals. A number small enough that if you gathered every survivor of humanity into one place, they might not fill a modern high school. Every person alive today may be descended from that narrow surviving group. Think about that for a second. You didn't just inherit your grandmother's eyes or your father's laugh. You inherited the outcome of a bottleneck. You are, quite literally, built from the genetic leftovers of the humans who figured out how not to die. So how did they do it? This is the part that gets buried under the mammoth stereotype. Survival wasn't about brute strength. It was about behavior. It was about small, clever adaptations that most people alive today would never notice they were still using. Archaeologist Curtis Marion has spent decades excavating caves along the southern coast of South Africa at a site called Pinnacle Point. What he found changed the story. During this brutal period, when inland Africa was turning dry and cold and unforgiving, a small population of humans didn't retreat inward. They moved toward the coast. The ocean, it turns out, doesn't care about volcanic winters the way land does. Shellfish don't need rainfall. Mussels and clams and whelks sit on the rocks, whether the sky is grey or blue. Marian's excavations found shell middens, essentially ancient garbage piles of eaten shellfish, dating back to roughly this exact period. The humans who survived weren't the strongest hunters. They were the ones who found a food source the volcano couldn't touch. This single decision, move toward reliable food instead of chasing unreliable food, might be the most important survival strategy in human history. And you still do a version of it today. When things get uncertain, you don't take more risks. You look for the thing that won't run out. The stable job, the full pantry, the certain plan, that instinct isn't random, it's inherited. But finding food wasn't enough. The cold itself needed solving. This is where fire stopped being a convenience and became a technology. Humans had controlled fire for at least 1,000,000 years before Toba, but during this crisis, evidence suggests fire use became more constant, more essential, more central to daily survival. Warmth wasn't optional anymore. It was the line between living through the night and not. And here's something most people don't realize. Cooking food during this period wasn't primarily about flavor. It was about calories. Cooked food is dramatically easier for the human body to digest than raw food. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking effectively pre-digests food, unlocking far more energy from the same amount of material. In a world where every calorie mattered, where the difference between eating and starving could come down to a single meal, this mattered enormously. Your love of a warm meal on a cold day isn't really about comfort. It's an ancient survival signal still firing long after the emergency ended. Clothing changed too. Not clothing in the sense of style, but clothing in the sense of a wearable microclimate. Researchers studying lice, DNA, yes, lice, have estimated that clothing lice diverged from head lice somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago, meaning humans were already wearing some form of clothing before Toba. But during the volcanic winter, clothing likely stopped being occasional and became constant, a layer between a fragile human body and a world actively trying to kill it. Shelter mattered just as much. Caves weren't just hiding spots, they were climate control. A cave holds a stable temperature no matter what the sky is doing above it. The humans who survived weren't necessarily the ones out in the open proving their toughness. They were the ones who found the crack in the rock and stayed there. Notice the pattern forming here. Coastal food, constant fire, clothing, shelter. None of these are heroic. None of these are dramatic. They're quiet, boring, repeated behaviors. And that's exactly why they worked. This is the part of the story that gets lost. We love stories about strength, about the strongest hunter, the fastest runner, the biggest kill. But the Toba bottleneck suggests something almost uncomfortable. Humanity wasn't saved by its strongest members. It was saved by its most consistent ones. The ones who kept doing the small, unglamorous thing every single day until the sky cleared. There's a modern mirror here that's hard to ignore. You live in a world of instant food, instant heat, instant shelter. You will likely never face a volcanic winter. And yet your brain, the one built by those Toba survivors, still behaves as if scarcity is one bad season away. That's why stockpiling feels satisfying, why a full refrigerator feels like relief, why the cold makes you crave something warm before you've even thought about it. You're not imagining a crisis. You're running 800 centuries of inherited caution. Psychologists studying decision-making under uncertainty have found that humans consistently favor reliable, smaller rewards over risky, larger ones when resources feel scarce. That isn't weakness. That's the same instinct that sent a small group of humans toward a rocky coastline instead of gambling on an empty inland plain. Some scientists still debate the exact severity of the Toba bottleneck. Not every geneticist agrees the population dropped as low as Ambrose proposed, and some argue the climate effects were regional rather than fully global. But even in the more conservative versions of this story, one fact holds. Humanity went through something that thinned us down to a fragile handful, and what pulled us through wasn't power. It was pattern. It was the willingness to do the small, correct thing over and over without needing applause for it. So here's the reframe. You touch that thermostat without thinking, and you assume comfort is your default setting, something owed to you by the modern world. But comfort was never the default. It was built piece by piece, cave by cave, meal by meal, coastline by coastline, by a small group of ancestors who refused to stop doing the boring, necessary thing during the darkest years humanity has ever faced. Right now, somewhere in your house, there is a thermostat. You touch it without thinking, but every degree of warmth it gives you was earned 74,000 years ago by people who had no thermostat at all and survived anyway.